This will be a Smoky Bar News comprehensive special report on the extra steps that school districts are taking to protect students when they're the most vulnerable. It's a national story. In Robertson County, Tennessee, the school district has taken a significant step forward in ensuring the safety of its students by addressing a previously overlooked vulnerability: school buses. While the nation's schools have been locked down against threats for nearly a decade, buses remain at risk.
So today we have spent our time preparing for that worst case scenario. We hear about school shootings, we hear about bomb threats and all sorts of things of that nature, and so today we've spent the day working with our transportation team members, helping them to be prepared for that event that we hope never happens. You know, we've taken time to deal with what does it look like when you have an altercation with a parent. You know, we have parents that come to the bus at times, and so this group here that has spent the day with us, they've given us de-escalation tips and skills and tools that we can put into our tool bag that might help us to be more successful in the work that we do out there in the bus. You know, the school bus drivers, sometimes I feel like we're in an island by ourselves.
So what we want to do is bring the school bus drivers into the world of active shooter training. We've worked with school teachers for years through the ALICE training program, through Run, Hide, Fight. All our instructors are law enforcement, and our goal is to loop in the bus drivers. They're the forgotten heroes. They're the ones that haven't gotten that type of training to the level we want to see. They're vulnerable. They're considered soft targets. They're out there on their own. They have a bus full of kids, but we want them to feel empowered, that they do have options. They do have the ability to mitigate situations to the best of their ability, also that de-escalation training. So spending the day with the drivers, with a team of instructors to really give them those tools and work with them. Over on the other side of the building, we are actually doing an active shooter drill with them, where we use a blank gun and we simulate gunfire, and we work, the SWAT guys work with the drivers on response options. A big portion of the training program we dedicate to prevention through recognition. One of our instructors here today is a retired Secret Service agent who really spearheaded the school threat assessment process that is nationwide now. His name's Greg Truhan, and Greg goes over and covers the behaviors and communications of concern. Bus drivers are in a very unique position where they may have the same student for years and years and years, myself included. I had the same bus driver for over 10 years, and she knew everything about me. She saw me in the morning, she saw me in the evening, and she would recognize behavior or communication of concern. So we want to make sure bus drivers have the ability to recognize those red flag warning signs and what those are, and really be able to probe and report those and make sure the kids are safe. And that's what he covers. He does a great job with it. We really believe that recognizing the threat before it becomes a problem is critical. Bus drivers the stack is, against them. They have such limited options. But if they can recognize that problem before it becomes a problem, that's huge. That's key. But we do want to still give them the tools of how to respond to those problems if they do pop off. So this exercise here that they're doing, we hide suspicious items on the bus. Bus drivers are required to do a pre-trip and post-trip inspection every time, as Josh knows. And we want to make sure the drivers have established a baseline of what should be there and what should not be there. So we do an exercise here where they're looking for suspicious items, everything from possibly a bomb, for drugs, weapons, and things like that. There's a lot of mini lessons involved here too. We cover accidental overdose by fentanyl exposure if they were to find something on the bus. And we do talk about responding to bomb threats or swatting, which is a big concern. So we really do threat recognition and awareness. We have a lot of videos. We do share the video from Alabama. There was a hostage situation where Jimmy Lee Dykes boards the bus, takes a hostage. It's a tragedy, but we got to learn from that. We got to be able to look at what happened, where it went wrong here. The driver at the time considered Jimmy Lee Dykes a friend, but in this profession, you can't have those feelings about others in the public. You want to build those relationships and have those, but that still doesn't give parents or anyone the right to board a bus and be on a bus. And those are things we got to have under control. And I know Tennessee has now the law where it's trespassing, for for someone to come on the bus, and it's posted, and it's huge. That's important. But yeah, the first portion is mainly classroom with videos and presentations and conversations and discussions. Second half, we're more hands-on out here in the parking lot doing stuff.
Jim, tell me, what made you start?
Jim, the reason I started S.T.A.R.T was I'm a police officer, active duty law enforcement. I have crossed that 50-year barrier. But early in, 2005, 2005, I became the school resource officer for school district in Northeast Ohio. It was about that time when I started to look at different things that the school was doing for security. And one of the things that I wanted to find out was our school bus drivers trained to recognize a threat at the bus stop or on the bus? So I met with my transportation director, and he said, no, Jim, quite honestly, our troopers, they come out here all the time to check our buses. They've never once talked to our drivers about what to do if a threat presented itself outside the bus or inside. So I turned to another gentleman, John Zappe, who I think you just met a little bit ago. And I said, John, we're both on the same police department. I was a SWAT guy at the time. I said, we got to change this. So it took a few years because we had to deal with other things. But in 2015, I created the S.T.A.R.T program. John came on board, and we did our first training. And we won the applause from the drivers, the transportation director, the mayor, the chief of police. Just about everybody loved the program. So I said, John, we've got to do this. We've got to expand what we're doing. And many of the instructors that are here today were with us on that first program. So we have since trained thousands of bus drivers. We're all over the place. And what we hear continuously is we're the only ones out here doing this at the level at which we're doing. I'm not knocking any other group out there, including the TSA and others. They just do it a little differently. I think the hallmark of our success is the hands-on scenario-based training. So we start with 4 hours about threat recognition, trying to get everybody, including the bus drivers, to think about the perimeter of the school and their bus stop. Can you recognize a threat before it becomes one? Once you recognize a threat, do you now have response options from which you could pull from to respond to that threat? On a bus, you only have microseconds before you have to respond to that threat. It's different than in a school. And I'll be honest with you, I travel the country. I hear it all the time, or I say it all the time. Nobody thinks about the school bus drivers. We target hardened schools all day long. We add school resource officers, alarm systems, cameras and fences. The more we secure our schools, the more at risk our buses become. So that's what kept us, that's what kept me up, that's what kept John Zappe up, and we created this program to try to change that. Most of the instructors that are with us today and travel with us are all active duty law enforcement. We do have a member from the Secret Service, formerly Secret Service, 22 years with the Secret Service, 11 of which he studied active shooters in schools for the Secret Service. And he could clearly connect the dots between the threat to a school and the bus driver. I'm not going to give his presentation away completely, but I would tell you what we're looking for is changes in behavior. And that's what let me just say this. A bus driver is probably in the best position to recognize those changes of behavior than anybody else. My own partner, John Zappe, had the same bus driver for 10 years. Every morning, he was picked up every afternoon by the same bus driver. If there's a change in his behavior, the bus driver is probably going to be the first one to see it because he's seen him day in. My own kids had the same bus driver for 3 years. So what we're trying to do is empower the bus drivers. Let me just say, we came to the conclusion that we've got to get this kind of education to bus drivers because they're instrumental to the total security of the school system. And that's our mission, is to get out there and get those teachers, get those bus drivers to be able to recognize those threats and be able to respond to it within a microsecond. But in a school shooting, and I'm a 2-time SWAT guy, so I understand that. We train for bus situations. If it comes to that, it's a really bad day for everybody. But in a school situation, if you're going to be an active threat in a school, you got to hunt your prey. You've got to find somebody to shoot or harm. So you have to go room to room to room to room, up a hallway, down a hallway, looking for somebody to attack. On a bus, it's very easy. They're right there. You just have to walk down the aisle. And That's what keeps us up at night, because you can't lock the front door. You got one person and maybe an aide with divided attention. They've got to be able to recognize that threat and be able to respond within a millisecond. And that's what we're teaching them here today. So there's a lot of education here. It's an action-packed or an information-packed 8 hours of training.
It's just been timely training and something that I'm very grateful for and thankful that Ms. Kaminsky, our grant coordinator, was able to write a grant and got some assistance to help fund this project today. And I'm just grateful that we had this opportunity to be as a department, because we also got to celebrate our team members and some that are retiring and whatnot. So it's just, it puts a lot of importance on the pre-trip process. You know, even I, a veteran driver of 20 plus years, you know, walking around that bus, someone had to say, you see that? It blended right in with the tire. So just those little things, like you said, being keenly aware, and it makes us go back and say, you know what, let's look at our bus facility. Where do we park our buses? Do we have adequate lighting? Because in the mornings, times when we're pre-tripping buses before we take off, it's important so that we are catching these things before they become a problem. If you could sit through some of those videos and not become emotional, I'd question whether you need to be in the seat of a school bus or even working in education. And our buses have no trespassing signs in honor of the Alabama driver that lost his life, and we're ahead of that. So Tennessee just mandated that starting in July, all buses have to have that posted. We've already done that because it was so important after we watched a fellow bus driver in another state lose his life tragically.
And this training has been absolutely great. It enlightens you so much, and you learn so much. You also get first-hand experience in it, and that's a very added plus.
Great training. I think it really helps the drivers and attendants be able to be more prepared.
They truly put on a first-class program to teach you a lot about how to protect your children.